"May I refill your water, ma'am?" She looked at my hands, looked at my skin, and said, "Don't touch my glass. I don't want black hands near my food." Her friends laughed. A guy in the corner pulled out his phone and recorded, "Get her away from me," he said. "You people always smell like poverty." And the whole dining room went quiet, like someone had sucked the air out of the room. That was the moment my life split in two. Before and after the day Evelyn Hartley decided to make me invisible in public. My name is Maya Johnson. I'm 34, born and raised in Riverton, 3 generations of women in my family who worked for other people's tables. My grandmother cooked in white houses back when the back door was the only door you were allowed to use. My mom waited tables for 30 years and learned the art of bowed heads and quiet exits. They taught me how to survive in the places that didn't think we belonged. "Bow when you must, but don't forget," Grandma used to say. I learned to smile. I learned to remember names and allergies. I learned how to be excellent and invisible all at once. The Willow and Vine is the kind of place that smells like old money and confidence. Crown molding, crystal chandeliers, linen napkins folded like promises. It's where lawyers make deals over lunch and developers toast themselves at dinner. For 80 years, they'd kept their traditions: neat white tablecloths, white faces at the management table, black hands bringing the plates. It was a pattern everyone noticed and pretended not to see. I worked there 11 years. 0 late arrivals, perfect attendance, 27 5-star reviews that mentioned me by name. And none of that mattered the afternoon Evelyn Hartley decided she didn't want me anywhere near her table. She arrived with a perfume that announced her before she walked through the doors: silk that cost more than my rent pearls that were not costume jewelry. She spoke to her friends like the room was her stage, never once looking at me until she wanted me to move. "I don't want that person serving me," she said loud enough for 3 tables to hear. Everything froze. Gerald Ellis, the floor manager, appeared as quick as a shadow. "Of course, Mrs. Hartley." And I was told to step away like a piece of furniture. No defense, no apology, just compliance. You could see how used everyone was to this script. I left a note that night in a small black notebook. Date time, exact words, witnesses. Day 1, Evelyn. Hartley, 12:48 p.m. Public refusal of service. I filed a formal complaint online because you do what the process asks. You give them proof and hope the system does its job. 48 hours later, I got the corporate form letter insufficient grounds file closed. No interviews, no follow-ups, no one called the people who were actually there. The HR machine swallowed the complaint and spat out silence. Then the slow suffocation began. At first, it was small. Different station assignments. When Evelyn came in, my shifts shifted away from the busiest sections. My access to tips dried up. Then it grew into a pattern that ate at me every paycheck. Money paid for special treatment can be quiet but effective. Donations to the Willow and Vine's employee fund, compliments in glossy magazines, a grateful handshake behind closed doors. Gerald sat me down and explained it like a favor. "They support our programs, Maya. It's complicated. Don't make it bigger than it needs to be." Translation: money buys immunity, and your dignity is negotiable. Other stories surfaced, whispered over coffee breaks and 5-minute lunches. Lisa had told a guest a table was reserved, and a week later, she was gone. Derek's hours were slashed without explanation after he asked a rich patron how far she wanted him to stand away from her while she drank at the bar. Monica had wine poured on her hand deliberately, and the complaint she filed vanished into the same invisible machine that swallowed mine. All of them were quiet exits, transfers, cut hours, opportunities evaporating until the person had no choice but to leave. No dramatic firing, no fingerprints on the process, just slow erasure. Then Evelyn crossed a line. She passed by me one afternoon and said soft as if it were a confession, "I would have thought people knew their place by now." Tanya, a coworker, hid her phone and recorded it. 2 minutes and 18 clear seconds of Evelyn's voice. When Tanya handed me the file in the parking lot, I played it 3 times. This was not a memory I could be told I misheard. This was a voice. This was evidence. But one recording by itself can be explained away, spun, or bought off. You need patterns. You need others. You need proof big enough it can't be swept into a drawer. I started doing what my grandmother never had the option to do. I wrote it all down, and I looked for witnesses. The pages of that black notebook filled with names, dates, times, little details that would finally be hard to deny. A former investigative reporter, Rachel Moore, emailed me after reading a comment thread about the Willow and Vine. She'd been pushed out of the paper years ago for naming names in a land development story. Now she ran a small, independent site where she could follow a thread without a corporate board breathing down her neck. She told me she knew how to find a pattern. Rachel dug. She found 7 people who agreed to speak on the record, 7 former employees, all people of color, all with similar arcs, a humiliating public moment, a missing HR investigation, a slow squeeze on hours until there was nothing left. She found an email trail thanking the Hartley family for a $15,000 donation to the Employee Welfare Fund 3 days after one of those complaints vanished. She found meeting minutes from the Riverton Business Association, the kind of private session where money and favors are traded, and saw an agenda note in formal complaints regarding Mrs. Hartley's decision. No action. They didn't just ignore it. They documented the decision to look away. That's a shape of complicity you can't plead ignorance about. But we needed more. We needed Evelyn's voice saying what these stories alleged she believed. We needed something she couldn't say was taken out of context. The backlash came quick. Evelyn sued Rachel for defamation and asked for $500,000. A law firm in town filed the papers and the message was clear. Poke a powerful woman and she'll bury you in legal bills until you stop breathing. Then HR did what it had been holding back as leverage. They terminated my employment. A carefully worded email, 3 professional paragraphs, no specifics, no warning, effective immediately. 11 years wiped with 3 sentences. I sat in my car in the parking lot, the engine off, and tried to do the math. Amelia's medicine rent the electric bill, a dwindling bank account. They offered me a settlement by way of silence, $10,000 and a gag order, and I thought of my grandmother and my mother who took the quiet deal to survive, who slept with the taste of it in their mouths for years. I could have said yes. $10,000 covers a lot of bills for a while, but I thought about the other girls who had taken the money and never slept again, about the barista, who would still be wearing a smile even if the owner spat at her, about the kid watching his mom put on a uniform and go into a place that didn't call her human. Sometimes the decision to fight isn't about winning money, it's about who else falls if you don't. A legal aid attorney, Marcus Lee, reached out after reading Rachel's posts. He looked at the notebook, the emails, the meeting minutes, and he saw the same thing we did, a pattern. He put together a strategy that didn't rely on one brave person with a video, but on the accumulation of documented acts, a petition witnesses willing to put their names down. The public response surprised us. An online petition hit 20,000 signatures. Local council members called for hearings. The hashtag Justice for Maya trended long enough to make a clerk in a municipal office notice. Then came the best piece of luck. A recording from inside a closed Riverton Business Association meeting captured by an administrative assistant who had been saving tapes like a librarian saves old receipts. On that audio, Evelyn's voice is as clear as a bell. She's a waitress, she's black, she should know her place, and if she doesn't understand that, I'll teach her. No spin, no context, no ambiguity. Her own words on record. 75 days from that first refusal, the city council chamber was full. 200 people reporters with cameras, the kind of attention money usually kept at bay. Rachel read the pattern. 7 witnesses testified. The audio played. You could have heard a pin drop. Evelyn sat there, pearls, bright, posture perfect, until her hands began to tremble and the color left her face. No dramatic collapse, no tears sobbed on camera, just a slow break, the kind that shows up in your eyes first. Then something happened that I didn't script, and no lawyer could have forced. I stood up. I didn't shout, I didn't beg, I didn't demand retribution. I told the room who I was. I'm my mother's daughter, my grandmother's granddaughter. And I told Evelyn where I belonged, not in her sense of order, but in my own standing, tired but unbowed. The room held its breath. That moment felt like a hinge swinging open, not because I was louder than her, but because truth is heavier than pearls when it lands in public. No one went to jail that day. The council couldn't criminally charge her, but the effects were real. Gerald was suspended and later terminated after an investigation found the donation had influenced HR decisions. The business association had to reform complaint procedures. Evelyn lost board seats. Contracts were questioned, invitations stopped coming. I found a new job that treated me like a person, and a little later started a small nonprofit called Respect at Work Initiative, so other people wouldn't have to keep a diary and guess whether anyone would listen. This story ends messy, because life outside of headlines is messy. Some people called me a coward before I started this. Others told me to be grateful I wasn't in my grandmother's time. There are still debates about tactics about the price of speaking up about whether the city moved too slowly or at all. But here's what I know: dignity has no price tag. Pearls can crack, people can break, but you can't put a price on the right to be treated like a human being. So, what do you think? Was I right to say no to the settlement? Did we go too far by making this public? Have you ever seen someone quietly erased so a family with money could keep their privileges? Tell me in the comments. Agree, disagree. Tell your own story. And if this moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear that taking a stand might not be easy, but it can make someone else breathe easier tomorrow.